Join former FBI senior forensic examiners Becky Passmore and Stacey Eldridge as they dig into the world of digital forensics, one bite at a time. Now leading their own consulting firms and educating the next generation of cyber sleuths, these badass babes of digital forensics bring sharp insight, real-world case experience, and a dose of humor to the bits and bytes that build today's investigations. From deep dives into business email compromise and ransomware attacks, Becky's specialty, to cracking the complexities of iPhone forensics, Stacey's obsession, this podcast delivers insider knowledge for professionals, students, and true crime techies alike. If you've ever wondered what really happens when the digital trail is all that's left, tune in and start parsing the truth.
Welcome back to Parsing the Truth, one bite at a time, where we uncover the people, the process, and the purpose behind digital forensics. I'm your host, Stacey Eldridge, and as always, I have my co-host, Becky Passmore, with me today. And we are diving into something every examiner needs to be prepared for, testifying in court. Now, this is not a new topic on this podcast, but it deserves a lot of attention, so we're back at it. Now, it's one thing to analyze data, but it's a whole different thing to explain that analysis under oath, clearly, confidently, and credibly.
That's right. And that's where preparation, presence, and education really comes into play. 3 pillars define not just how we testify, but how we carry ourselves every single day as digital forensic professionals. Preparation is about doing the work before the work, understanding your evidence, validating your methods, and anticipating how your findings will hold up under scrutiny. Presence is about that composure, how we show up in the courtroom, in front of a class, or even in an incident response meeting. It's the quiet confidence that tells others we know our craft and respect the process. And education is what keeps it all moving forward. It's continuous learning, not just about tools or technology, but communication, ethics, and leadership.
Joining us today is someone who truly embodies those 3 pillars, not just in theory, but through decades of hands-on experience and service. Laura Heldwein is a powerhouse in the world of technology and education. She is retired from the FBI after an incredible 39 years and 8 months of service, where she worked as an information technology system admin and a digital forensic examiner, a mobile communications operator in the technical response unit, and an educator. So it seems like she's done it all when it comes to technology in the FBI. But throughout her career, Laura has testified in federal, state, and local cases, bringing clarity to the courtroom and credibility to the field. She's also trained countless investigators on how to navigate communication.
Yeah, absolutely. So welcome, Laura. We're glad to have you here on Parsing the Truth. And what's interesting is Laura brings that poise and that confidence that helps people understand when they need to communicate and navigate the foundations of whatever the communication that they're working on. So Laura, we'd like for you to introduce yourself and talk about how, your long, honorable 39-year plus career with the FBI.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. And, just as you all said, my name is Laura Heldwein, and I have that I like that you put the 8 months on there as well, Stacey. But yeah, it's a long time. And, I got lucky and I've been fortunate enough I started as entry level 1986. You do the math. I usually tell people I was 12 when I started.
Right.
But
Becky and I were 5 when we joined the FBI.
Right.
So
right.
Absolutely. And when I started, I first started as a file clerk, then I moved into like a logistics supply technician. And that's where I was just learning the FBI, how to navigate the FBI as an organization, mission driven and what it really is all about. And then I moved into technology. So I became a computer specialist, which that's what we were called back in the day.
Yep.
And then moved into information technology specialist as well. And then I was pulled in to do this thing called CART in the FBI, which stands for the Computer Analysis Response Team, with both of you have been on.
Yep.
And that really was the kind of grassroots and cutting edge of that digital forensics discipline in the FBI. So I was pulled in because I did computers on the day-to-day
Right.
operations in the Buffalo field office. So they're like, hey, you know
Do you
computers.
remember what year-ish you got
About
pulled into CART?
94. Yep.
Okay.
Early.
So yeah,
94,
early.
95. Yep.
Were they
And
like,
that's,
do you like computers a whole bunch?
yeah.
Do you want to do CART now?
Yeah. I don't even know if they asked if you liked it. They just said, "Hey, you do computers. You're one of
You
those,"
know
and
computers.
would say, "You're kind of one of those nerds. Hey, can you come and help us? We have a search warrant to conduct, and we think we're
Wow.
going to have a computer." And that, that's back in the day when it was just a CPU and a monitor, keyboard and mouse, and you were
Yep.
seizing it and bagging and tagging it. So we were kind of building that new discipline, building it
Mm-hmm.
as we went. Writing those SOPs, kind of writing the playbook as we went along. So we were figuring out how to handle digital evidence, preserve that data integrity, and support investigations. So that really kind of was what CART started, and then we kind of all made those contributions early on, and then obviously when we were all part of it, later in the mid 2000s, and then on to what it is now. So then I transitioned more into technical instructional design, supervising leadership roles, things like that, where I was running national programs like CART, training for digital forensic examiners as well as mobile communicators. And now that I've retired in my older age and I've transitioned into higher education, working along with Becky, and I love
Yep.
it. So I really focus on preparing the next generation, working kind of from those lessons learned as I was coming up through the ranks, if you will. So kind of looking and seeing what the challenges are for the students now. I mean, we have, look at cloud security, AI, and all those different challenges, and just critical infrastructure, and really how that's really formed, developed, and grown. So I get super excited because I really feel like that's a super rewarding. As both of you, I know, are in the academics, really to sometimes you feel like, gosh, did I reach anyone today? And then
Yeah.
it always comes back around, right? Like it always comes where a student will say, hey, I was successful here, or hey, you really helped me make sense of that. So that's really where I'm at today. And it's really, it's exciting and rewarding.
That's awesome, Laura. So I have so many questions for you, but I'm going to let us go through this conversation and then maybe I'll pepper you with any unanswered questions that are left over at the end if we don't get to them
Absolutely.
through the natural flow. But let's talk about these three pillars we identified earlier. So the first pillar we're going to talk about is preparation. And we use it all the time. We got to prepare, 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 prepare. But in digital forensics, it's so much more than just reviewing that report before you step into the courtroom. It's about discipline and how we're building credibility long before we ever take the stand.
Mhm.
And it starts in the lab, right? Where we're doing our documentation, we're validating tools, we're using validated tools, we know how they work. And most of all, we are using repeatable processes
Mm.
all along the way.
Right.
And then it continues as we write stuff down. We're writing it in our notes, or maybe we're typing it up in our notes and typing it up in our reports. And if we make an assumption or we jump to a conclusion, we're actually validating that before we put it in our, in our notes or in a report. And then also, we're going to anticipate how the opposing side might challenge our findings. We just don't be like, this is my assumption and leave it at that. We're going to do some legwork to suss it out. Now, Laura, with nearly 4 decades in the FBI, what do you think true preparation really looks like for a forensic examiner who's getting ready to go into that courtroom and testify?
Yeah, that's a great question. Preparation begins way before you get that subpoena. When you even have an inkling, you kind of already know, talking to investigators that you're working on the case with, you'll be prepared. You receive the subpoena, but you as a forensic examiner, you need to know your case inside and out. And I know that sounds kind of canned or almost just kind of corny in a way, but that just doesn't mean like what you found. Those forensic
Mm-hmm.
artifacts, super important, obviously, but how you found them, just as you said, those processes that you followed. Not only that, you need to know exactly whatever those findings are, what things, what applications, where did they come from, how did you find them, how did you validate them, did you validate your tools, do you understand every hash value that was created? And Are you anticipating? I like that you said that, Stacy, anticipating what cross-examination questions you may get and
Yeah.
really anticipating where you may get hit with some of those harder questions. So you really need to be able to walk that jury step by step through your process. And if you can't do that, you're not ready.
Right. And I know, like, I spend a lot of time preparing and doing that. And I feel like I'm ready for court when I almost don't need my notes at all to get through it. I think we should be able to talk freely, like on the stand as we're explaining stuff. But I think sometimes we get so prepared that we forget that our notes are there and that maybe we should look at them, especially when those questions are coming from the other side.
Mhm.
I agree,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. And Laura had a lot of experience in this when she supervised. She was supervisor under the CART program and led a lot. Well, the majority of the moot courts that we
Mhm.
did with the digital forensic examiner. So I love that. It's really like being the techie scientist and a storyteller. And I can remember when I had to testify one time, I was extremely nervous, and that's normal to be nervous, that the AUSA pulled me to the side, the assistant U.S. attorney pulled me to the side, and he said, "You know more about that case
Yeah.
and what you're about to talk about. I need you to go in there and tell it like a story." And I learned then you were telling a story. So two of those roles that have to coexist for testimony to really land and be understood by those jurors. So you need that precision of a scientist and every fact verified, every conclusion supported by evidence. I told that to my students on Tuesday. You can't just walk
Mhm.
in there and be like, "I know it's like this," and you have to
And please
support it
don't
with
say the
evidence.
tool said, and I'm
Yes.
like, the tool speaks now? Wow.
Right? Yeah.
That's my joke.
That's a great point.
Exactly. Yeah. But you also need that clarity and a flow of telling a story. You
Mhm.
can't be like a robot and just answer the questions. You have
Yep.
to communicate, and you have to be very clear with your communication. So it's not just enough to say the artifact was found. You have to connect the dots. And that's where it comes from, why it matters and how it fits into the larger narrative of the case. And that's what turns raw data into understanding.
You said a great point was communicating. We can say every variation of that word, communication, communicating, communication, any different form of that. It's not just about reviewing the evidence, but it's about understanding with the people that you're going to be working with in the courtroom is a team effort as well. And you have to
Yes.
make sure that you and the prosecutor, the team is speaking the same language and
Yes.
understands each other, because you have to help the jury and the judges be able to understand together.
That's
You
right.
all have to be on the same page. Before every testimony, I always met with the prosecutor ahead of time. Federal was a little more how do you say, structured, and
Yes.
they were very, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, very structured, very militant about it.
I was going to
Some of
say
my state,
anal, but
yes, okay, that's a good word. Some of the state and locals weren't quite as, you'd meet them like half an hour before, you're like, oh my gosh, I need a little more,
What are you going to
I just
ask
got to
me?
meet you.
yeah.
Yes. What are you going to ask
Yeah.
me? So
Yes.
definitely keeping that in mind. But this is just to align yourself, get that clear communication and align your strategy, not to change anything. You're not
No.
changing what was found, right? You as a forensic examiner aren't changing what you found, changing any findings at all, but just to make sure you're both speaking that same language, like I mentioned earlier, and that you both understand and you're on the same page. All right. So
Well,
you
yeah.
need to
And
know.
and speaking of like being on the same page, it's kind of like you need to know what answer the attorney is looking for. Because if you're kind of off, they'll ask you something, you'll start talking about X, but they wanted you to talk about Y,
Mhm.
and then they're confused, and then they start asking you different questions, and then you become confused, and then it becomes a game of like 20 questions on the stand, and everybody's lost and confused, and then you look
Mhm.
silly. And so that's kind of why the preparation is key. And
Absolutely.
especially if it's complicated, because we don't want them to have a incorrect assumption, even though they've read our reports theoretically before they meet with us and things like that. It's just complicated. It's like, where are you wanting to go with this line of questioning? What answer are you trying to get to? What facts do you want to bring out? And that's why preparation is important and
Yep.
time consuming.
Yep. That's huge
For
that
sure.
you say that because, you know, we live in a world of, as examiners, right? And with our peers, we live in this technical realm with all these acronyms and tool outputs.
Yes.
This means that. And, it's kind of like not jurors, they don't live in that same technical, acronymy, technical world of, complex words or things like you're like, what does that mean? So it's our job to help them to understand that and to not, going to your point, Stacy, where you said we can make each other kind of look foolish if we aren't getting to the point because there are going to be, you're going to be questioned. The way you answer those questions and the piece that the attorney wants you to get to, the prosecutor, is really important because you don't want to confuse it. You don't want to have to be asked the same question like 15 different ways because it's like, wait, does this examiner not understand that? And then it just adds to confusion to the jury. And we're there to alleviate the confusion and to clearly
Yes.
explain as a layperson, and to what when we're under oath, right? When we're really nervous and the stakes are high, right? I mean, we're there to help clarify and to make understanding easier and faster for the jury to get to. That's why we rehearse. It's all about rehearsing because sometimes you can work your nerves out ahead of time as well, and then that helps you with that clarity on the stand.
Yeah.
For
I
sure.
love what you said. And I just forgot it. What did you say? Oh my gosh. I love something you said, Laura.
I like it all. I love it all. Just say you love it all.
I love it all. I love everything you just said, Laura. But let's move on to the second pillar now, presence, because
Mhm,
this one is so much more about just showing up and sitting
mhm,
on the stand. It's the art of how you carry yourself,
mhm,
from what you wear to what you say, your
Yes.
tone and your timing. And you can have everything perfectly documented, your analysis be bulletproof. But if your delivery falters, the message can get lost in translation. Oh, I think I remember what you said. It was like, we're there to clarify things, we're there to clear it up. So if we're confusing people when we're talking, we're
Yeah.
not doing our job,
You're
right?
right.
Because if they learn nothing from what we've said, it's like, were we even in the room talking?
Right.
Right. Right.
So, presence, it's about connection. It's how the jurors decide whether to trust you and
Mhm.
what you're saying. And it's also how attorneys read your confidence and how you show respect for the process. The way you walk into the courtroom, the way you greet attorneys, and it can be even before you get into the courtroom, really. Oh, no. And even if you pour water on the witness stand and say something
Right.
about your professionalism before you open your mouth, we have to bring that
Yeah.
in there because I could not pour water the first time I testified. So, that was like being calm under pressure. How much
Why it's
water could I
shaking.
get out of a pitcher that would not pour water?
Oh, you poor thing.
I still have flashbacks about it. Clearly,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's bottles of water for me or nothing on
Oh.
the witness stand from now on. But anyways, it doesn't stop on the stand either. It's in your
Mhm.
emails before and after the courtroom. It's in your reports. Those will get shared to the jury most likely, and every interaction leading up to that moment in the stand. The truth might be in your data, but credibility lives in your presence.
That's
So,
right.
Laura, question: how would you cultivate the composure and confidence that you need when all eyes are on you? And it can be even like eyeballs watching you on TV
Mhm.
these days.
That's
Great question. I've always come from this school of people will tell you things like to inspire you and give you information and provide you guidance, but sometimes they don't tell you the how to get there,
Right.
right? It's like, be
yeah.
confident. How do you do that?
Right.
Have presence. How do you do that? Well, some of it's just from actually doing it. And Becky had brought up that we had participated in many, many moot courts, whether it was our own certification as well as you did, Stacy, going
Yep.
through our own digital forensic examiner certification, but also in the training realm, we went through multiple moot courts. And presence is huge. Every attorney will tell you that, as well as any forensic examiner. It's from the moment you walk in that courtroom. I always say you're being sized up, but I think you're being evaluated.
Yeah.
Probably, excuse me, a better word. But it's before you even open your mouth, just as you said earlier, Stacy. When you walk into that courtroom, maybe as you're walking to the courtroom, and then when you get into the courtroom, we are all human. And people notice how you carry yourself. They notice what you're wearing. They notice how you interact with other folks. They also notice how you react to opposing counsel. I know a lot of times in moot court, a lot of times posture and body language for a lot of our forensic examiner trainees changed a bit when they were being crossed by the defense.
Mm.
Again, it's moot court, so it's practice, it's training, but that's the best way to put people under pressure and make them feel a little nervous. And Becky may have made a few people cry, but I won't mention that here right now. But your tone of your voice, your posture, the volume, if you appear defensive, if you appear impatient or dismissive, that energy colors everything from your report to how whatever you say after that. It builds to that credibility and your confidence. It really does lend it to that. So confidence absolutely matters, but you never want to cross that line, right? Too much confidence can almost mean the other C word, a little cocky or maybe arrogant, right? Or dismissive. We all know that person. You don't have to let people know you're like the smartest person in the room. Yeah, you're there as an expert. Totally get it. And that's your job. You're there as an expert. But as you said earlier, Stacy, your job is to make sure people that you're clear and that they understand that you take them to that level and you walk them through so they do understand. So, you're not there to argue. That's
Nope.
the attorney's job, right?
Yeah.
You're there to help shine a light on the truth. And truth is huge. And something I always try to remember over the years of testimony is that you don't dominate as an expert. You're not there to say, let people know, hey, I am the smartest person in the room, but you're there to steady and balance it, right? When you look at the jury, right, we were always taught to let the attorney ask you the question, then turn and give that eye contact to the jury.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
so important to engage because you're checking for understanding and then you're also
Yes.
allowing them to give you that confused face, like,
Yes.
wait a minute. And then you cleaning it up, right? Or saying, maybe talking clear or explaining or using an analogy or something like that. So bringing that clarity and composure. It says that I'm here to help you understand, and that's
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah, for sure. And you're so right. It's about credibility and really not theatrics. I mean, I can think of a few court
Good men.
sessions, but
That's a good one.
a few court sessions where I felt like it was theatrics, but
Hmm.
it's really not. It's about credibility. You're not there to perform. You're not there to be the performer in the room. You're there to clarify, like what you were talking about. Both of you have brought it up. You're there to clarify every gesture, every word, even the pauses between your answers sends a message about your confidence and integrity. And it goes back to your hand motions we were just talking about before we started this podcast and talking with our hands. When I get nervous, I will move my ring on my ring finger back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And an attorney told me one time, she said, whatever you do, don't ever wear a ring on that finger in
Hmm.
this courtroom again. And I was like, yes, ma'am. And she said, your distractions from moving that ring, I could not take my eyes off of it. So again, it goes back to every gesture, every word,
Hmm.
and everything that you're doing. So credibility is built on that consistency.
But what would happen if you went in without that ring? Do you think you would reach for it and then like freak out because it wasn't there?
Well, either that or I would sit here and do this, right? I would still do the motion. I feel like I would still
Hmm.
do the motion. I just wouldn't have the ring to play with.
So maybe the better thing is to practice and be conscious of that and
Yes,
Right.
try to figure
Rehearse.
out what
that's
to
right.
do with your
It's
hands.
hold your hands down here like this and don't move, right? And then we build that credibility on consistency, the same
Hmm.
steady of professionalism from the lab bench that we've done all the work on to the witness stand. It's about showing respect for the process and letting the evidence speak through you, not over you. And
I
when
like that.
jurors or judges see that the calm confidence, that quiet command of your findings, they believe not just the data, but they believe you. I really feel a lot of times it's best just to be quiet and let people ask questions, and you show your confidence through your answers, and people truly believe you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Again, confidence, credibility, all those things that really lend to it. So let's talk about like maybe something a little more uncomfortable. What about when you don't know the answer?
Mm.
Mm.
How do you carry yourself then? How do
Right.
you help to support or let your credibility show? There is tremendous strength in just pure honesty. And,
Right.
admitting you don't recall something. I mean, what if you had like a 30, 40, 50-page technical report and you are being
Oh, that's where
asked
I'm at right now.
ex-
I'm on like
and you
page 36. I'm
36
not
of
quite done.
right for one case, right?
One case.
For one case. And are you expected to memorize everything that you wrote in that? Absolutely not. So sometimes if you are asked a question on a small detail, very specific detail, it is okay to say you don't recall, right? So if it falls outside of your scope, it doesn't make you look unqualified. It really does. It makes you look credible because you're really letting that honesty show through. So the courtroom's full of people who can spot that overconfidence. And when
Oh,
do you
yeah.
ever see when someone's trying to guess or act like they know the answer, and I'm using air quotes, instead of saying, "Hey, I don't recall." Those jurors and the judge, they can all spot and that really lends to your credibility or can take away from your credibility. So you don't know
Yeah,
the answer,
even in your
just
body language. Your
absolutely, you
body
start to
language presents that,
fidget.
right? You start to
Absolutely,
fidget. Yep, exactly.
the nerves come up because you're
Well,
trying to suppress the lack of honesty, right?
right, right. Well, the other thing I was going to say is let's talk about the magic of saying the words, at least to your attorney, I do not recall. And then they will say, well, is there something that will help you refresh your memory? And then you'll say, why, yes, my case notes. And
Yeah,
then, you go through the whole rigmarole of getting permission to look at
yeah.
your case notes. And I've noticed lately in state court when I've been watching, the witness just asks like right away. They're just like, "May I look at my case notes?" So I guess that's a thing now too. So you
Yep.
kind of suss it out before you go in and be like, "Do we need to play this game of saying I don't recall? Will that refresh your memory, or can you just say, May I refer to my case notes?" And
I-
I've even had twice they've let me bring my tablet into the courtroom. I didn't have to print my notes, so that
oh,
was
nice,
fantastic.
Wow.
nice.
I know. And
That
that was
is
federal
very
and
nice.
state.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
I
That
Very
is
know.
good.
nice.
And that
Yeah.
goes to that whole preparation you're saying earlier, Stacy. We're all getting on the
Yeah.
same page, right? We're all getting on the
Yeah.
same page. So if there is a time where you can't recall, you don't recall something and you want to ask to use it, it is good to kind of talk that through with the prosecutor to say is it okay to ask to refer to my notes or what would be the appropriate way to ask to see that, and then you're on the same page and then you don't look unqualified or, you look like a credible human being who's being honest and that
Yep.
lends to your character sitting on that because they want to trust you, right? The jury wants to be able to trust anyone who takes that stand, and that's really because they have to trust you before they're going to listen to anything that you found and listen to your process. You're there to inform people, not to impress. I love it. It's the other I word. Inform,
Right.
not impress. They're not looking, as you said earlier, Becky, that theatrics, they're really just looking truly to understand, and your
Mhm.
authenticity goes a long way. People may not remember. Do you remember that quote from Maya Angelou? Give me one second. I'm going to read it from my paper if that's okay.
Yeah.
It says, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And I know
Mm.
that sounds a little like
Yeah.
kind of hokey, but I think it translates into testimony as well.
Yeah.
Agree.
People, I
Yeah.
mean, there is emotion in that, right? So people will remember how you made them feel. They may not remember every technical detail that you spoke and, on the stand and some of the technical jargon you may have had to use, but they're going to remember how you made them feel about the testimony. So whether they trusted you or whether they believed that you were being fair, um, and accuracy, and whether your tone matched the integrity of your work. You could have the nicest, well written report and you could just fall apart on the stand or not have that good, credible presence with you when you are testifying. So your demeanor, that is truly an extension of your professionalism. And I think that professionalism is huge. It's not just your reports, your findings in that, your CV, but it's also how you carry yourself and how you present yourself on the stand.
Right.
Yeah, and it goes beyond the courtroom. Your presence is going to show up everywhere. And we've
Mhm.
mentioned the reports, but it's going to show up in your tone in your
Mhm.
reports, the professional in your emails, all that stuff that's getting sent over in discovery,
Yeah.
the way you prepare for depositions, because, it might not just be showing up for one day. You might have to go to the depositions first and then go to the trial. And so, the attorneys might get two shots at you talking about whatever you've done. And every interaction can become a link in that credibility chain. And we've said it before, the attorneys will attack you any which way they can. If they can't get you on the technical stuff, on the facts, they're going to come after you. And so, say you were like a jerk and really pompous when you were going through the depositions, they might come after you real hard when it's time to come to the trial. So that's why we're all going to be respectful when we're doing these professional interactions. And so that's why we're being professional all the time when we respond to questions, when we have to do follow up. We got to be organized with all of our information, because especially when you're coming from the prosecution side that goes over to discovery. And I certainly on the defense side now make comments, at least to myself, about like, oh, there's like nothing in these notes, the reports are empty, stuff like that. So then we're making judgments and assumptions before we even go into the courtroom about how good the work was done before we even get into the trial. And so if you're just professional and detailed the whole way across the board, you're going to set the tone for every interaction that is happening in this case.
I like how you're saying it has to carry through, because I feel like it's a needle and a thread, and you want to make sure you follow through and stitch it all the way through, because in today's world, everything you write or say could end up on that big courtroom screen, right?
Right? This
Becky, how
podcast.
many, yeah, right? Becky, how many times did an attorney pull up possibly a trainee's LinkedIn page or social media page and then project it, and kind of go at them, like you said earlier, Stacy, goes at them, trying to chip away, whether at their credibility or just, then will knock them off, and then makes their demeanor be a little bit different in the courtroom. And you have to make sure that, everything, like you said, from your lab notes to your reports, from emails, communication, your communication logs, once it's in writing, it's part of a record. So you have to make sure that you're consistent. You're consistently professional throughout all of it. That's why it's not anything that you should be turning on and off. You are a professional person throughout everything that you do in work. Even if it is something that it's just your process that you do, you always follow this certain process. You have the same tone, and being very fair and accurate in all of your emails and any of your workflow.
Neutral.
Yes,
Try to be
neutral. That's a
neutral.
great word. I was struggling for a word. Absolutely neutral. And that all lends to that credibility and it's consistency. That consistency in everything that you do. Not just competent. Everyone always thinks it's the smartest person in the room. It's the smartest. You can be the most technical savvy person, but if you don't have credibility and you're not consistent with your professionalism, it really can detract from even your technical expertise. Judges and juries, they notice patterns. If your documentation or your communication isn't respectful, or it is respectful, you really may have to defend that or be able to explain that. They'll assume that your analysis and that process that you explained that you went through carries that same integrity or not, right? Depending on, how you carry yourself, and then if you're consistent. So if you're sloppy and defensive and careless, that credibility starts to crumble and starts to deteriorate. So professionalism, it's what reinforces that reliability. And who doesn't like a reliable, credible, professional forensic examiner? I mean, it's a win-win, right?
Right?
It
Right?
tells the
Yep.
court this examiner doesn't not only know what they're doing, but they actually take it seriously and they care.
Yeah. And I know Stacy deals with it as much as I do, talking to potential clients or attorneys. They will compliment us on how we take what we do very seriously. And it is part of, all of it is part of that professionalism that we carry in our career. So now then, let's talk about that third pillar, and that's education. And all of us are educators, and we love to educate those who really want to learn from us. This one touches everything we do, both learning and teaching.
Yep.
And it's a thread that runs through every part of our work, whether it's us decoding an artifact, mentoring a new examiner, or just explaining findings in court.
Yeah. I mean, I think we could all agree that, education really is the backbone to expert testimony. I mean, you can't have expert testimony without education. right? Education, research, educating not only ourselves. We all know technology evolves so fast, quick. I mean, even in versions and things, you could say, hey, the findings and the artifacts were in this app using this version, and in an hour, a blink of an eye, it has already changed, right? So you have to be able to speak
Are
to
you talking about
that.
iLeap?
Yeah, you have to be backward compatible yourself as well as
Yeah.
forward thinking too.
Yep.
So it really
Yep.
keeps us relevant, and that lends to that credibility again, with us as digital forensic examiners. But it's not only just about keeping ourselves sharp, it's also about educating those prosecutors. One of the big things for me was prosecutors, but also our agents, the investigators, the local PD, when we did the image scan and things and tools and techniques that we use to help them locate digital evidence and be able to preserve it properly. So then we can kind of they can hand the baton and then we can take over from there. And if that makes any sense. So they really depend on us to translate what that data means and help us be able to preserve that data and then be able to do a report and finding analysis for court. So
Right.
Right.
it's
Right.
huge.
And you're not just explaining bits and bytes or zeros and ones, and certainly not X's and O's on the hard drives. You are actually translating technology into truth for
Yep.
those who are listening and learning from us. And the way you communicate can make or break how
Yeah.
what you're saying is understood.
You're right. You want to demystify that digital evidence. I think about because I can my mother, she's 83 years old and she thinks she's tech savvy and she's not. But what I will tell you is a lot of times not understanding leads to distrust. I can't do online banking because I can't trust it because she doesn't
Yeah.
understand it. It's something as simple as
Right.
that. So I that to me that is digital evidence. That is forensics. You want to make my 83-year-old mother be able to trust what you are explaining. You want to strip away that jargon and help to see the story inside the data. You got to help tell the story, but help them to understand what the story is telling. And that is demystifying that the digital evidence itself. So you want to empower the jurors because they have to make an informed decision and a fair informed decision. So, patient teachers to me, patient teachers, and I stress the word patient,
Mhm.
uh, are really your best expert witnesses. You have to be patient teachers. So you're going to simplify things without oversimplifying because I think sometimes we can almost seem like we're talking down. And we don't want to do that.
Mhm.
You always want to be respectful. I think, Becky, that's why you and Stacy get complimented on that because you demystify and help to understand without being disrespectful or talking down to. So
Mhm.
it's you're bringing them along together with us all. Take the time to make sure the understanding happens in the courtroom, and you kind of do it and make them feel like you're doing it all together. Because I don't know
Yeah.
about you, but when I've had to explain or walk someone through in a layman's terms, it helps me understand as well too.
Yeah.
I'm part of that process of understanding too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it happened today. I was talking to a potential client that wanted to bring me in on a case, but he didn't have an understanding totally on the rules and law of how evidence and specifically digital evidence is owned by individuals. And so someone else can't consent to giving access to someone else's devices. And so just being able to educate him a little
Mhm.
bit on that today. He didn't quite understand it at first, but I just listened to him and then explained it back. So it always goes back to being able to tell that story, right?
Mhm.
And education isn't just about degrees or certifications. It's really about the ability to communicate your work with that clarity and confidence. And that's what we look for as examiners to be, but also to educate examiners to be.
Yep, exactly. And that's not easy.
Hmm.
It's not easy to do because I think as we're going through forensic examiner certification, just your baseline certification. I mean, does it stop there for either of you?
Exactly.
It is the next certification. It is the next body of knowledge. It's the next thing, right? You're always looking to educate yourself and keep up with the technology alone. You also have to keep up with being an instructor, being an educator,
Yes.
and helping people understand, right? It's not about like giving a lecture. We've all given lectures, and you see the students' eyes, glazing over.
Oh, yeah.
We don't want to do that to our jurors, right, in the courtroom. But I like to think of a courtroom, and I've heard many people use it as an analogy. It is really like a classroom. It just doesn't come with a schedule as in a textbook, or, and a syllabus, but definitely it should be treated like a classroom because you are helping to educate and inform, and you're really walking the jury through evidence as if you were just, like I said, bringing them along together with yourself, unveiling that story with that credibility and confidence and that presence. So sometimes it's really easy to start using acronyms. The military will say that, we say it a lot in federal law enforcement. Try to trade some of those acronyms and technical jargon for something like a picture or a visual or an analogy. I remember back when we had to do tech terms in moot court as we
Yeah.
were
Yep.
coming through, part of it was, hey, give us the definition for a peer. So you're going to give technical stuff and you're going to wow with the technical jargon. But then there was also the, hey, tell me in layman's terms, tell me what this is. So right blockers, we'd say, hey, it's like a book. Your hard drive's like a book in a glass case that you can't touch. And a right blocker lets you look through it, but it won't let anyone touch it or damage the ones and zeros. So using something that's more relatable, less technical jargon, making those comparisons that everyone is familiar with really will help tell the story, um, and it really help bring that informing and bring those jurors understanding along. And don't you love when you see with your students when that moment of or it clicks,
Yes.
or you've asked the 50 millionth question and then they finally are starting to answer you and give you feedback, and then they're like, yep, it clicks.
Or like when you're grading the homework and you're like, wow, these submissions are really good now. They're getting
Yeah.
it. They're at least
Af-
speaking to the right things.
Yes,
After 10 weeks of educating, you're finally getting those
absolutely.
results. Yes,
And
for sure.
doesn't it feel good as a educator as well? That
Yep.
mystery kind of
Mhm.
fades, and really all you're left with is now they understand, right?
Yeah.
And to me, I love that. I love that whether it's a nod or aha, I got it. It simply passing to that information, not just knowing it, but understanding it. To me, that's really where you step over. You can tell people a lot of information. You can spew out a lot of information, and it's just one way passing. But when that information turns into true understanding, and it's structured into a way to tell that human story. People like
Yeah,
stories. People understand stories.
they
So why
do.
not tell that story?
Yep.
Yep.
And all of that to say, knowledge isn't just a tool, it's a responsibility. And we have to pass
Yeah.
that knowledge along.
Yeah, you're right.
Well said. Education is the engine that drives the other two pillars. Preparation gives you structure, presence gives you delivery, but education gives you purpose.
I like that. Education gives you purpose. I mean, if you really take a look at just that last line, it really
Mhm.
truly does. If you can help someone understand something or teach them something, or
That's right.
yourself, right? You always have to be a receiver of education too. We can never stop being a student, right? Being a perpetual student. But if you really look at, like, really think
Well, to stay
about,
accurate in this field,
yes,
you can never
correct.
stop learning. You have to
Correct. It's
keep
not
up.
just about you teaching other people, but
No.
the better student you are, the better teacher you're going to be, I think,
Yeah.
as well. But really, it is it 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 speaks volumes. So yeah, I'm sorry, Beck. I love that you said that
No, no,
that
and
sentence
I
gives you
was telling the
purpose.
students, when Stacy and I went to the oxygen forensics conference, a lot of times you're there to present or you're going to conferences to present, but I also like to hear. I like the knowledge, and I have said over and over and again there were some great presentations given at that oxygen forensics.
Yes.
I was just so impressed with the people that presented, and the knowledge that they shared. I mean, I learned something in every single presentation I heard. So again, getting fed the knowledge and sharing the knowledge is important.
That's great.
Yeah.
100%.
So, Laura, let's kind of start wrapping up. Do you have one message for new examiners who might want to do what we do, go all the way, and end up on the witness stand? What would your message for them be?
Master your craft. Never stop looking for ways to communicate and tell the story. The evidence speaks through you. You're the one who's going, your findings, your report, you're the one that's going to tell that story, but you need to bring along those jurors. So master your craft, be present in the moment, always educate yourself and educate others. Take those opportunities, especially if you're still doing digital forensics, to educate the attorneys, to
Yeah.
educate the law enforcement personnel.
It's a team effort to educate the
Yes,
attorneys.
100%. And
All
then,
of us are doing it
and,
constantly.
and they're not afraid to tell you, oh, whoa, 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 right? Wait. So really always look for those opportunities. That's how you're going to not only uphold your findings, but also just bring your integrity to that, bring that integrity and that credibility. So master your craft.
Yeah. Now, one other thing I did want to ask, and I'm going to go off topic from the courtroom, but Laura, I know you deployed and did some crazy things, and people like to hear war stories. So, like, what is one quick story you want to tell, like, about the craziest thing that ever happened to you in the FBI?
So
You're like, so many.
crazy, like, I know. I'm like crazy, like,
Or whatever
okay.
story you love to tell.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be necessarily. Well, I was
Oh,
working in a forensic examiner capacity. So I was deployed overseas into one of the sandbox areas into Iraq, and I was asked which to do something that was totally not part of the forensic piece because we were working 12-hour days, 7 days a week, working constantly looking at digital evidence for the mission over there. And
yeah.
I remember being asked because I had a courier card. So for those of you who know
Yeah.
having a courier card, what that means,
Yes.
to be
It
able to
means you do
do.
not have diplomatic immunity. That's what that means.
Yes, it does. I like that you said that. We're being honest here. Absolutely. I was asked to be part of a two-person integrity movement of a rack-mounted server.
Oh,
And
okay.
oh yeah. So I can't tell you any of the players or anything. I was just told to meet this gentleman at the embassy, and then I had to walk outside the embassy. Mind you, I am not a armed
Right.
personnel at all.
Right.
And even over
Right.
there, they would let you practice and use the fire. I never was a gun toter. I never really
Yeah.
knew how. My husband would die if I was telling everyone this, but I was asked to go meet this gentleman who walked me outside of the actually embassy walls, and we went to this crazy place where I had to meet this other guy, and I just kept saying, God, I wish. And I was just trusting everyone, like, and so I
Right.
met he took me to the location I was supposed to be, and then I was going to meet the gentleman that I did work with at the place that I was doing digital forensics. And I just kept saying, God, I hope I get to see him because I go into the restroom at the place, and you know what the military stuff is like. So there was all these like Playboy pinup posters, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So I felt like I was in like a mechanic shop. So I come back out, and I was never so happy to see this guy that I worked with, one of my counterparts. So he is standing there with a rack-mounted server with a guitar strap. I'm not kidding you. And he had duct taped to the server. And he's like, "Okay, we're ready to go." I'm like, "What are we doing?" And he had like all these guns strapped to him. So we get into this crazy vehicle. It's one of those like ones that go over sand and everything. We go to the
Yeah.
helo landing pad because I had to just
Yeah.
stay with him to say that nothing
Yeah.
ever happened with this server. So the person that
Right.
dropped him off, so to a person integrity, we fly back. The whole time I'm thinking, what in the world with the gun strapped to it was hilarious. And I thought that was crazy because the whole way I'm just like, I just hope I'm in the right place and with the right people. And I just trusted, and it was pretty quick and easy. And then we land back at our home base, and I was like, all right, good, we're good to go. And yeah, so that was probably one of the craziest things that I ever did that was kind of outside of the realm of what I thought I would have been doing when I was working over there. So it was a
Yeah, so
free
all I
Black
have in
Hawk
this,
ride
yeah, all I have in my vision of my eyes is a rack-mounted server with a
rifle,
big old rifle
duct tape.
Like
duct
duct tape to it.
taped
If
to the
Girl,
I
front of it.
tape the
I'm
gun
not
to the
lying.
server, it will be super safe.
I was wondering, like, well, yeah, he had like sidearms too, but I was like, what are we gonna do with that? Like, and it
So,
just
like,
was,
was it a long rifle? Like a long gun?
yeah,
And
long
so,
gun.
like, how long was the rack mounted server? Was it turned in such a way so then, like, could you still, like, am I
Yeah, that's a
holding the
good point.
rifle? And then, so then the server is such a way that I could still, like, point and shoot
That's a
and defend
really
the
good.
server because it's taped securely.
It was like taped
was
diagonal.
awful.
It
Their server was taped. Yeah, you're right. Maybe if he would have turned it. And I tell you, when the helicopter landed, that thing was, the wind that the propellers put out. The
Yeah.
server was kind of, and the guy was small. He was a small dude. I mean, I'll tell you, I thought he was going to fall over. It was like it
Fly
was just
away
comical.
with the
Yes,
server.
and the rifle.
I
it
want
was
to
a- it
see
was
an
an-
AI generated video of how this went down.
I need like a
I know.
sketch artist and then put it
Yeah.
in an AI
Yeah.
generated video.
It was an intimidation factor. This gun strapped to this server, you're not getting to it. Okay.
I know. So the
The
next
server
day I'm
has a gun. Be careful.
it's protected. That's called triple layer. It's not only HTTPS, but it's another layer of security.
That's right. That was your layer of security. Oh my
I
God.
remember the next
That's
day,
hilarious.
working in the forensics lab. They were just like, "Hey, yeah, you were on a." I was like, "Yeah, it was very interesting. It had nothing to do with digital forensics, but I was like, yeah, it was kind of one of those crazy experiences that was like, never again could that ever be repeated. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that moment in time would never ever be repeated.
As my sister and I say around here, you can't make that crap up.
You cannot. You cannot. That is true. Yeah.
Oh
So that's
my
probably one of the
gosh, that's
craziest,
great.
where I still don't even understand like how
Why
that
the
ever
server had a
happened.
gun?
Yes,
Why
yes.
did the server have a gun?
That's the question. Every time Stacey sees me, why did the server have a gun?
Do we know why yet? I'll ask you that next time.
Yes,
Do you know why?
exactly. Stay tuned
That's
for
so funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
Part 44. Why did the server have a gun?
exactly.
Oh my gosh.
God.
That's funny. That could be a whole nother podcast.
Yeah,
Totally.
Yeah. The server
What is
could
your
have
level
its
of
own
security?
podcast with him and the gun. Could have their own
It
podcast.
could. Oh,
Oh my gosh.
goodness.
Well, Laura, we thank you so much for joining
Thank
us.
you,
We thank
yes.
you for your service to the FBI, your nearly four decades of service to the FBI, telling us fun stories, giving us wisdom and knowledge about preparation, presence, and education when being digital forensic examiners and experts in testimony. Yeah, we really appreciate you and growing with us in
Yeah.
this process. And yeah, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for the opportunity and thank you for what you both do. It is an integral part of keeping up with technology, just keeping passing the good information. So thank you for what you both do.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure.
Yeah. Yep. So until next time, stay safe, stay sharp, and as always, keep parsing the truth one bite at a time.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow us to get notified the next time a new episode drops. If you can do more, head on over to parsingthetruth.com and donate by clicking on the donate button. Parsing the Truth is a nonprofit organization, and we are raising money to send a new digital forensic examiner to IASIS training next year in Orlando. Thanks.